Alright, so we're going to get started with the MonoGame presentation by my three friends that I met for the first time today. Dominic, Louis, what? Alright, well, my friends Dominic, Kenneth, and Dean. They work in one of the most active channels on the Mono network. I don't know why it's so active, but I can no longer keep up with what's going on there. But you know, these guys love games, and you should talk to them because they speak a different language than what most of us speak. Just this morning somebody was asking me, is it worth going to GDC? And I said, yes. I was like, am I going to learn a lot of technology? He's like, no, you're going to learn a lot of different things that are not related to technology. So you should listen to these guys and see what they have to say.
Hi, evening all. My name is Dominic Louis, and I hope that if you search for MonoGame on the internet or on Twitter, you'll know that this talk is actually about being monogamous. Now, with your technology. I'm essentially the iOS developer of the platforms that we support, and the current project coordinator. Kenneth here is the main man behind the MonoMac platform, and Dean handles the Android. We support other platforms, which we'll get to shortly. So, what exactly is MonoGame? It's essentially an open source implementation of the Microsoft XNA4 API. I hope I'm speaking loud enough. Usually too soft. And where Microsoft used DirectX, Direct Sound, etc., we're using OpenGL, OpenTK, which is a C# wrapper around OpenGL, and OpenEL on the platforms that it supports. We are sort of hoping to be, in the long term, a massively multi-platform game development library, but our sort of motto is write once, play everywhere, and that's what our overall aim is. So, what platforms? Currently, as I mentioned, Mac, iPhone, Linux, iPad, these are all our cats. Android, and Windows, which at the moment that particular port's quite far behind the others. There's obviously more interest because the XNA is already there. But I'll come to the future of what we hope to do on Windows later. So XNA is essentially how many people know what XNA is? Okay, well, most of you probably don't need this slide at all then. But for those of you that don't, it's actually a game API that's supported on Windows, Xbox, Windows 7. Used to be on the Zoom device, before they took that off. And a DirectX 9 implementation, and written in C#. So the Microsoft provides a development environment for free. You can use Visual Studio Express. And it supports 2D, 3D, networking, sound APIs, and they make it quite easy for you to put your games together. It's quite serious business. It could be better if Microsoft supported it more, but as you can see, there's a few figures there of a few games, and you know they don't have to be. A lot of these are all indie titles. Bastion, as Miguel mentioned earlier, if you were here, has won quite a few awards for its narration and some of its gameplay elements. So, I think if you were here for Miguel, you probably saw a bit of this, but I'll just recap quickly. MonoGame sort of came from essentially XNA Touch, which was headed up by a guy called José Antonio Leal de Farias. I hope I pronounced his name well. And I got involved when Jose essentially decided to move on to use Unity. And I was still quite passionate about using XNA Touch at the time, and you know, I wanted to get in on the app gravy train. So iOS 1 was essentially iOS only when we released that. And then by the time Kenneth came on board, we had a Mac and an initial Android implementation. when we put out 1.5. Then Jeff Norton was working for Novell as part of the team. They sort of like pushed us onto GitHub. They said, you know, get your project onto there. And we've sort of not looked back since we moved there. So the main repo is on GitHub. We still have a discussion forum on Coplex under MonoGame.coplex. And after the 2.0 release, with some nice backing from Team Xamarin, we've managed to get a lot more visibility, so therefore a lot more people are contributing and helping out. We've still got a long way to go, but it's a lot better than it was. So what do we currently support? 2D graphics, custom effects via GLSL. We're actually getting to the point where we actually allow, essentially Microsoft supports Reach platform, which is a subset of what you would get on, say, a desktop in terms of APIs. It's quite reduced, but we're trying to sort of take that a bit further, so we will allow custom effects on ours, not just the pre-built. We will have the pre-built ones there, but if you want to get a bit fancy and you know your shader stuff inside out, we'll support that as well. Currently our networking is handled by the wonderful Ligrand module. At the moment it's local, though we have done tests where we've got things running across the internet as well, but that's not sort of like ready for the public yet. Sound is opening out, as I mentioned earlier. Not currently on Android, that's using native APIs. So where OpenAL is available, we use that. And otherwise, we'll try and use whatever the SDK for that platform supports. Exact is a proprietary audio format from Microsoft, but it makes handling the music and the sound a bit nicer. We do have some initial support for that, which only went into our development branch recently. So, am I going too fast? Okay, good. We do also support video playback, pretty much on all the platforms. We prefer to support the XMB format, which is what Microsoft said their content pipeline compiles down to. But we do have support for the following formats. And on the input side, we started implementing Gamepad for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS for desktop platforms. And gestures support for just your simple touches. We're starting to support gestures on the mobile devices. We've had to pretty much scratch together information about how to get some of the compiled formats working, but we've got support for these. I mean, it's on the site, so I won't go into too much detail, but we do support quite a few things, and with more stuff in the works, interesting stuff I think in the works. So what are we missing? The current things missing are custom content pipeline, which are essentially a pre-compiler that Microsoft have for their XNA stuff, which compiles all their assets, you know, your sounds, your images, down to this proprietary format. So we don't have that built in at the moment, and we think it's quite a big project, but we're leaving that sort of like till the end after we've got 3D in, essentially. Obviously 3D support. We plan to add at some point HLSL, not currently supported. As I mentioned, networking is limited to local networks at the moment, and you cannot link to Xbox Live games. So we're not sure how we go about doing that. I don't think Microsoft will be too happy. So how can you help, or how can you use our stuff? What you need is MonoDevelop on a Mac, Linux. If you want to do Android, you can do that using MonoDevelop on Mac and Windows. And for iOS, you definitely need a Mac. sign, I think it is, the code sign that Apple require for you to deploy your app to the App Store. So you will need a Mac OS and a Mac for that. Obviously on Windows you can do Visual Studio, but the Express version does work there. But not for Android, correct? Visual Studio, yeah. Our latest release is 2.1, and we had to move all the samples that we had into a separate project, so they were compressed at 300 megs and expanded to about 1.5 gigs, so big. So how do we essentially work if anybody wants to contribute? We essentially have 8 core maintainers, there's 3 of us, and then we're pretty much spread around the world. Dean and I from London, and Ellis from the US, so he works out of Luxembourg. But we have people in Australia, the US as well, so we're an international team at the moment. All pull requests, even our own pull requests, are peer reviewed, so even if I submit something, either Kenneth or one of the other core maintainers will have a look at it before it gets pulled in. If you submit enough patches, I'm sure this is probably the same across other teams, you eventually get asked to become a core maintainer. One of the really cool things that happened this week, by going by the moniker of Kung Fu Banana, Chris has added automated tests that actually run the tests against XNA and MonoGame to make sure that they're compliant. Some really cool stuff, and it ensures performance. And we have an on-demand integration build test, which because my Mac blew up this week, I haven't been able to. So I only got this information the last day or so. But essentially from IRC you can run a command that will actually check a pull request. It'll actually merge it into the code base and tell you if it breaks the build before you even had a look at it. And then you can, so we're planning to improve that. Chris is planning to improve that. And we think that other projects will probably find that quite useful. Yeah, at the moment, obviously, as it says, queries the GitHub API, runs on Linux, Mac and Windows, and we're working on iOS. There are, as we said, lots of sample codes from all over the place. 30 for Mac, 25 for iOS, Linux and various versions of Android as well, 11. The difference between starter packs and samples is essentially, starter pack is actually a complete game. You can essentially change the graphics and then, for instance, array 22, but it gives you the basics frameworks of the whole game from end to end, while samples are showing off a specific shaper effect or flocking technique or something like that, which you can then say without that code and then put it into your own. So we cover quite a few things there. And all of them are based on the XNA, well not all of them, but the vast majority are based on the XNA actual samples, so that we ensure that everything's working the way it should. Now, I should hand over to Dean.
Okay,
What he talks about.
there's been a lot of talking so far, so what we'll do before we get on to some more talking is just go through and give you a rough idea of where we are with some of the samples that are in GitHub at the moment. GitHub. So we can start with the role-playing game.
Yep.
A lot of these, as Dominic said, are samples that are actually available ready for XNA. We use the XNA samples that Microsoft provide as a means of testing that our APIs are compatible and things are working as they should do. This is just one of their RPG examples, so we can just start in the game. And there you go. Eventually we'll get somewhere where you can walk around. There you go. This one's a starter kit for us.
It is a starter
This is a starter kit, so technically speaking, you could actually just replace all the graphics, use the code and finish the game if you wanted to. If you felt so desired. Yeah. So that's the role-playing game. There's another one which Kenneth recently ported, which is the Catapult game. This is kind of middle-aged version of Angry Birds. Really, the object of the exercise is just to smash someone else's catapult. The nice thing about this particular game is we've got this one running on every single platform, including Android and iPhone. It's quite addictive, unfortunately, so eventually you get to a point where you just won't want to quit. What's the next one? I think it's Vector Rumble. If you haven't got that one, do don't worry about that. Where's the video player? You got the video player? Never do live demos, people. They never work.
Video players in MonoGame got samples.
Yeah.
It's in there.
Oh yeah.
It's underneath Draw TV.
There you go.
Okay. My terrible name.
Fire.
Yeah.
Fire that one up. Video playback actually works on most of the platforms. We do have one issue with the Android port at the moment in that the sound plays but the video doesn't show up. So we're trying to figure out why that is. So we're using the appropriate code.
What brings you to the land of the gatekeepers?
We were hoping to be able to show this on iPhone, but as Dom mentioned, his laptop crashed this week, so we basically haven't had a chance to actually get that compiled up. It's fine. And then there is Vector Rumble. Is that one still available?
Right click code.
Vector Rumble is one of the older It's one of the older kind of demos that you can get. It's actually XNA 2, so officially Microsoft don't support it, but it's a very good test for user draw primitives where you can customize the rendering system.
Yeah, but
Fingers crossed it'll load. Should have some lift music while we're waiting for that. This particular example is actually a good demo for showing multiple players on the same machine. You can actually have two people join. No, I'm the blue one. Yeah, there we go. I can't play that game. Could have written libraries for games, but I can't play them. Okay, so that's just a rough overview of some samples that we've got running. We've got quite far. We've still got quite a way to go, but like I said, we've got a lot of people working on it. Next section, which is about advertising. How many people sort of like deal with Android or iOS apps at the moment? We've got want to develop it. How many people want to develop Android or iOS apps and games? Yeah. Well, if you do, you want to get some adverts in it. Everybody else does it. Both platforms can have ads. It's a bit more difficult in Android. I found some code by a guy called Greg Shackles. I don't know if he's here. No, probably not. Using one of the really old Google APIs for the AdMob SDK. And I took that code and we updated it so it would work for the latest stuff. Like I said, it can be a little bit tricky, but there's a bunch of stuff that you need to do. You need to add the SDK to your projects, add another Java file, add a wrapper file for C#, which uses JNI to talk to the Java file. Do some modifications to your manifest and change start code and various other bits and pieces. Probably took me probably an evening to get it sorted out, but as it was so tricky, we decided we're going to put a sample up in GitHub for people, so you can get it down, just compile the code and see how it works. Just to give you a rough idea, there's your manifest stuff. We don't have any support through the UI to do these extra pieces. Well, the permissions you can do, but not adding extra activities. You need to. If we've got any Android developers here, you need to open the manifest yourself and do some hacking. But like I said, it's not that much. And we also then need to change how we attach the game to the Android window. Normally, what we do is we just create the game instance. So we do a new My Game, and then we do a set content view G.dot window, and that would be it. But because we want to overlay the advert on top of everything, then we need to do a little bit of extra stuff. This particular sample that we've got here doesn't actually show how to dock it to the bottom of the window or the top or anything, which is used the default setting. One thing to bear in mind is that you will need your publisher ID, which you have to register an account on Admob to do that first. To get that first. A couple of things to watch out for. The first one is really, it probably seems really obvious to experienced developers, but we do get people asking on the forums, why can't I debug my application on my 2.3 phone when I'm doing adverts? The latest Google SDK says you have to support their version 4 of the operating system, so it's Ice Cream Sandwich. And because of that, you need to debug, if you want to debug your code, you have to debug it on a Ice Cream Sandwich operating system. But it doesn't mean you can only release that, we can actually do older platforms as well. One of the other things to watch out is that adverts don't always appear. I've since found out that that's nothing to do with my code. And I was getting quite frustrated about that, and it's more to do with the fact that the account is quite new, and sometimes Google just don't give you ads, which is a bit of a pain. And one of the things to note is that a couple of enumerations are missing, we've noticed from the Android API. The Gravity one wasn't in the latest one. So you need to kind of look those values up yourself. But they'll probably fix that then. Yeah, I should have mentioned it earlier. There's an awful lot of stuff in that. No, that's fine. iOS is a little bit easier. There is already an iAd namespace that you can import. One thing you do have to be aware of is scaling your banner so that you're on the appropriate screen size for the device you're working on. So if you're on iPhone, you need to be smaller. If you're on iPhone, you need to be a little bit bigger. Demo example of code there. You need to, unlike Android, there's no publisher ID that you need to put in your application. You just need to register at the portal address that we've got on there. So it's part of the registration process. So there's, once you've registered your app, you don't actually have to embed any IDs or anything into your application, which is quite nice. That's the next one. Adding the banner is fairly straightforward. It's very much like Android actually. You just create your banner view, do some sizing, hook into some events as to whether you get in ads or not, and then act on them. This bit is sizing based on the size of the screen, and you can decide whether you're going to put it at the top or bottom or whatever. And then finally just add it to the game view. So it's fairly straightforward.
Something I'll add, obviously use ads responsibly, don't put ads in the gameplay thing. I mean, try and put them on a menu or something, it's really annoying. I think that a gamer might expect to see ads like in the middle of the game, unless it has specific context.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll just, hopefully, if this works. We're going to get a video.
Hang on a second.
So regarding Admob, I don't know if it's the next version, but we will release finally.
Excellent. That's fine.
It's actually on the tree.
Yeah, we did have a problem with where we were trying to create a library to put it all in, but the JavaScript one, I was talking to John.
Yeah.
I was out chatting with him about it.
Yeah, we
basically ignore all that stuff I've just said.
It's gonna get fixed.
Not yet, but soon, hopefully, yes.
Right, I did have I was going to show a demo of some ads, but as we can see, they're not showing up, which is exactly what I was talking about. So we'll have to skip that bit, unfortunately. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'll hand over to Kenneth, who's going to back you some information about how we've dealt with the networking side of things in MonoGame.
Hello everyone. Now that Dean and Dominic has gone over, actually just Dean has gone over how to make money using MonoGame in your platform. Basically, what I want to do is discuss how you might be able to bring more people into your gaming sessions, or and making more people available, and that's by adding networking capabilities to your games. Basically, this is going to be a high level because we're kind of pressed for time there, so I'm going to have to do a little bit fast, but it's going to be high level. There's plenty of information out there if you really want to do it because we follow the XNA. So any of the XNA books, you should be able to grab any detailed information that you want. What we did was we actually took the Catapult game and we added the networking capability so that you can play across the network. So what you've done is what I'm going to show you is what basically the process that you need to add the networking information, the networking part implementation to your game. It's actually quite easy. But first, let me just discuss about the goals. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to implement as close as possible the networking protocols that are actually delivered in XNA. And that basically makes it painless as possible for the developers that already have a network game in XNA to actually port over. So that will, for the painless part and everything else, that's actually great for the games that are going to be ported over from XNA. Basically how we did this, Dominic already mentioned that we used Lindgren for the networking, and basically with a few modifications to get it to work for Android and everything else. That's what we used. We placed our information on top of it. Okay, first of all, getting started with the network games, what you want to do is that you want to initialize the gamer services subsystem, and that's basically just like XNA does. You really need to initialize it so that you can actually start using the networking APIs and get information back and forth. Most games will use the gamer services component, and basically all that is an actual game component that's added to the components of the game. And by using that, you're going to get your update intervals at a regular rate, so that you can actually take care of the information in your program in a synchronous way. And to start using the gamer services, all you have to do really for all of that is just add the gamer services component into your game constructor. This one is the network session management. There's a lot of information there, but everything is basically taken care of using the network session module and class. Anything you want to do in the networking part, you will go through network session. Okay. And basically what it does is it has an update method, and what the update method, and that's called within your program whenever you want to do that. It's specifically called whenever you want to, and usually by frame, you want to call this update so that you can pump the messages back and forth, and that interacts with the game component service. What you have is whenever you call the network update, basically what it does is it sends your network packets that you want to send. Then it also takes care of any changes in session state, such as which players are in the session, also your session events, like when they end and join, when they join and leave the session. And it raises the manage events for the significant state changes, like the join. And it also returns incoming packets, so that whenever you send it, you're going to have the other games receive it over the network as well. And it takes care of all that in a synchronous fashion as well. What this does is it allows the program against the network to program against the network session object really without any threading concerns, because you actually control the update method when you want to do it in your frame, when you're updating your frame. Then basically the session updates are kept separate from the game service system pumping so that you'll never really get an asynchronous call. You've actually got everything controlled within your game loop. And if you started getting asynchronous calls coming in from all over the place, you wouldn't know where you were in whenever you're updating your game information. But they also allow that down below, or in a background thread if you wanted to. You can call that in, but you have to take care of more of the information and keeping the frame rates and all the things, all the information synchronized. So it gives you flexibility on that part. Basically what we have is what they call matchmaking, and that's where you actually publish an instance of the game. And to do that, well, the thing is you have to publish an instance of the game so that other people can find it. So basically you use the create method and the begin create for doing that, and that spreads it out for peer discovery. And then to discover the instance of the game that you want to join, you have you use the find and begin find methods on the network session. What this does is it returns back a collection of available network sessions that you would be able to use in your game to determine what games you want to join. So somebody puts out there, John, you only want to connect to John. He has his name out there. You connect, because there might be 3 or 4 different games out there that's broadcasting on the network. You have the code there, how you would, available sessions. You have the network session find with the maximum players that you would want to join. All of that works within the session as well.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Is that to just play with other players, or to actually download the game itself? Or
No. You've already in your game, and what happens is this is so that you can find the other games on the network. You have to publish the game.
You've only got it and you connect.
Yes, exactly. You publish the game, and your instance of the game as John Smith or whoever, and so that other people can find you, and that's the methods that you use. Okay? Am I talking too fast? Probably I'm just nervous as all hell. Stage fright. Where am I? Next we'll talk about the players in the game. Basically without the players you really don't have a network game. And they are actually exposed from the network session as well. Like I said, the network session is everywhere. It's the principal class. It's going to hold everything for you. And also along with the events indicating when the players leave and join, as we mentioned before. Also within the players, you have the network session host, because the network session host is actually the one that creates the session. And in the game, you might want to only do certain things whenever you're the hosting session. And also you can find out which gamers are local to the actual game machine. It all depends on how your game is going to be set up. And we have an example for, and all this code is actually taken from the Catapult networking example. So I'm just showing little bits of that so you can see. The invite accepted, you attach to the events, and also in there you can there you got the is host, any program logic there on their hosting. Also, whenever you're in the game, you want to know when the players leave and join, and this network session takes care of that as well. And it contains the properties which you can the properties which list the players who have joined the session. So you have a whole list of your gamers in this session, and you get all gamers, and within that list of all gamers, you can know which ones are local gamers. Actually, all gamers are everybody, local as well as remote users, and then you can know which ones are local users. Local users are the ones that are actually on your machine in a split screen mode session within your game, and the remote gamers are the gamers that are on another machine, but still on the same network, subnet. And you can do that by actually attaching to the gamer joined and gamer left for that. And you would create your custom event handlers. Now that we've got all the preamble out of the way, what you really need to do is just, the next thing is create the network session. And there are multiple types of sessions that can be created. There's the local sessions, like I said, are the ones you would do a split screen the ones that are actually on the same computer. And then you have your local network sessions, which are basically the remote computers that are the gaming machines that actually connect, and they're on the same subnet. And then they have what they call live sessions, which are over the internet, and we still do not have that. We've actually done some testing, and we do have a sample relay server, and that connects over the internet. It's out there, and if anybody wants it, they can take it even further. And we actually have the code inside the MonoGame right now to actually attach to that server. So we just haven't done anything with it yet. And of course, the creating session, as I mentioned, is the host and owns the multiplayer session. But that does not imply that it's over the internet or anything else. It doesn't have anything to do with a game server or authority per se. It's just he's controlling, and you can get to that information in the session. There's also no implied network with this either. Implied network as in a peer-to-peer session or hybrid or client server. Nothing is in the host and when you create the session. Nothing is implied because all that has to be determined within your game. So your game is actually going to determine what's the information that is going to be passed back and forth. And they just give you the API to do that with. And we create a system link there with it, which is actually within the game. And what you have is once you have the session created, what you can do is there's multiple events that are actually sit throughout the game. And these are the players, this is the game state as well. Whenever you start the game and in the game, there's events for that as well within your game that you're going to need to know when the game starts, so that you can move from one state to the other, from lobby into gameplay, back from gameplay whenever a gamer joined and left, so that your logic knows that there's only one player instead of two now. So you need to take care of that as well. And then at the end, whenever everything is done, you do a session ended, and you can also grab that information over the network. When it was ended, it tells you that it was ended, and so that you can take care of it on both sides. Okay. I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to put the sending, the send and the receiving data all in one, because it's basically the same thing. It's just the opposite. Whenever you send data, you create a packet writer to write your information. And basically what that is it's a helper instance, a helper object out there that actually knows how to format the information, specific information, basically like your vectors, your matrices, and everything else. It helps you do that, so you don't have to think about it. And it writes it efficiently as well, so that you don't, so that it sends it over the internet, over the network correctly. Put them together. Basically, what happens is whenever you have local gamers on the same machine, they can also send and receive messages at the same time, and that's going over the network. So what you'd want to do is for each time, what you want to do is you want to loop through each local gamer and find out if they have any information to send in there. 2 or 3 local users on there doing certain things. You want to send that over to another joined game. Each one of them can send information, so you have to loop through there. The same whenever you read the information, you would want to loop through as well for the local gamers to receive the information. Okay, you would, we already passed the network. Whenever you want to send the information, basically what you do is you take that packet writer, whenever you write out the information, and you want to pass it to the network session, send data. Network session does everything, like I said. And there's also receive data on the other side. For the packet writer and also the packet reader, what you have is, you also have, one up? Yeah. I just want to make sure that everybody knows. No.
Oh, back
there. Yeah. Whenever you start writing your network games, you need to be careful on what options you're going to send. If the information doesn't need to be sent reliably and just need to blast it, don't use reliable. Reliable in order basically sends everything, and the other game machine, you can clog up your networks really fast because the other machine is lagging behind because it's actually waiting for all these packets that are broadcast to wait in that order, 1, 2, 3, and they can be out of order. It's just broadcasting out there. So just, you need to be really careful with that. You can clog up your network real fast. Not very responsive. Okay. One more. Oh, that was the code for the, sorry. Yeah, go up one. And that's the code where we have our, we define our message type. And here's where we have the is host, because we only want to send certain information like the environment information. He's going to be the controlling within the host. And then we have the for each local gamer, and we write out the information with the send data, the packet writer. And usually you can, with the packet writers and readers, you would add one at the beginning of your game and you use them, reuse them. There's no more recreating the packet readers and writers. It's one instance throughout the whole game. Yep. And the receive data is exactly the same, just on the opposite way. And here here's the part where we actually receive the data. We've taken the local gamer as we loop through, and is there actually data available for that local gamer? And we do the receive data, exactly the same. And if it's local, and we don't need to know anything because we already know that information, so we pass it up. And then we take each type of message and read it, using the same methods as we did when we wrote it, so you can know if it's vectors or not. Okay. And to actually end the session, whenever the host is actually going to be the one that wants to end the session, and it depends on if it meets the requirements. What they'll do is, what the session will do is it'll actually call it in session. And basically in our game, all we're saying is if all the gamers are count to 1, if everybody's left, then we call it in session on the game, and it breaks down all the networking information from your game. Okay, and that should do it. We do have.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, for those of you that weren't at FOSDEM, what actually happened at this point was that the video camera ran out of battery. So from this point on in the presentation, we haven't actually got any video. So what I'll do is I'll just go over some of the things that happened at the end of the presentation. At this point in the presentation, we demonstrated a networked version of Catapult Wars called Catapult Net Wars, working between an Android phone and a Mac OS. I currently don't have any video of that, so what we'll try and do is post up another video of the networking working a little bit later on. At the time of the presentation, we pointed out that there are up to 26 titles at the moment on iOS App Store using MonoGame. We had our first Android release that week, and actually since then we've had 2 more releases going on to the Android market, and we've got a few, obviously Chrome Bastions running in the Chrome browser, and we've got a couple of games on Mac OS and Linux as well. So so the number of games that are actually using MonoGame is actually increasing, which is great. As for the future, we're currently working on a 2.5 release, which is supports GL ES2. And a whole bunch of bug fixes since the 2.1 release. We're planning to roll that out towards the end of February, beginning of March. In the slideshow, we actually said we were going to work on MonoGame 3 once 2.5 is actually released. The reality of the situation is, since the Infinite Flight dev studio guys gave us their code drop, start on MonoGame 3 has actually already the coding on MonoGame 3 has actually already begun, and we've got a separate development branch for that. So that's there's a lot of active development going on in that particular branch. So in that branch, we've actually got a HLSL converter running, and that will take the Windows shader code and actually convert it into stuff that OpenGL can understand, and it does that on the fly, so it should make porting easier. We do still
plan to maintain support for GLSL. So obviously that's the native thing that people use on Android and iOS and Mac and Linux. But this is a nice little addition. As for the future, obviously we're going to plan on extending the networking support, hopefully so to get it fully working across the internet. We've got a guy joining the team to help us with DirectX 11 backend for Windows 8 Metro, and we're looking at getting MonoGame working with the Cell SDK. Cell SDK is if you check it out, it's a kind of gaming system. There is like I said, the networking side of things. We're planning to hopefully do maybe some web-based stuff to store leaderboards and do matchmaking and various other bits and pieces, and obviously built-in advertising support. What we actually want to do is integrate advertising into the gaming system, into the MonoGame system, so it's very easy. You just turn adverts on or off by setting a few properties rather than doing all the other bits and pieces that we've got. Interestingly enough, it's worth noting that during the presentation, the guys at Xamarin mentioned that in the next release of the Android application, there will be built-in advert support. So a lot of the code that we went through during the presentation, you won't need when you get the next release, or the release that has that in. So, but they are working on it, so that's pretty good. The other thing we're working on is the PlayStation Suite. Their SDK is still kind of in development, and it's changing. Obviously, but we're working on getting that ported. So hopefully, when that gets released, MonoGame will be able to support the PlayStation Suite. Google, obviously, we're going to try and have a chat with the people that did Bastion and find out if we can sort of like make use of or duplicate some of the things that they did to get Bastion running within the native client. And there's also some interesting possibilities with a new little device called Raspberry Pi, which comes out of Cambridge, which is a small $25 to $30 ARM-based PC. It's got quite a lot of capabilities to it, so it'd be an interesting device to get MonoGame working on. It's running Linux. It's an ARM-based processor. There probably isn't going to be too many problems porting Mono to that, but it's certainly an interesting development because it's got, I think people have got Quake 2 running on it, so it's quite powerful. There's a whole bunch of contact details for myself, Dominic and Kenneth. Mostly the IRC channel is the good place to hang out and ask questions. And there's also the Coplex site where we have discussions. We try and check that every day, but obviously the team has certain people who are expert in certain areas, so if you do post a discussion point and no one answers for a few days, then just be patient and we'll get to it. Okay, and that was the end of the presentation. There was a few questions. I can't remember all of them now, but one of them was about the content pipeline, whether we'll be implementing it. The XNA content pipeline is actually quite large, but there were some interested parties at the presentation who might be willing to take that on, and so we're actually in discussions about whether that will happen or not. But it'd be an interesting thing, see if we can get the content pipeline working, say within Mono Develop on Mac. It'd make things a little bit easier. Okay, so that was the end of the presentation. On the end of this, we've tagged on some slides about the automated build and testing system that we've been working on. I'm not an expert on this, but what we'll do is we'll include the slides on the end. See if I can just go through briefly. What we've actually done is we've got a unit testing framework that allows us to run unit tests between XNA and MonoGame to make sure we're compliant. It's mostly non-visual tests, but there is some visual tests that they've put in, so we can verify that what we render under MonoGame matches what is appearing in XNA. I don't know how how complete that is, but it's a work in progress. We've got, as part of this system, we've got a build bot that attaches to the IRC channel and allows us to send commands. So if we get a pull request from one of our contributors or someone that isn't a regular contributor, but we can actually test out their build prior to actually even pulling it in, or even code reviewing it for that matter. So we can get a good test to see if it breaks the build. And if it does break the build, then obviously we can let people know. The build bot actually produces an output in a web page, and it informs you in IRC where you can go and get that information about, you know, build logs, test results, and all sorts of other bits and pieces. So it's really handy. If you do want any more information about the building system, then just hop on the MonoGame IRC channel, and we'll do our best to answer questions. Okay, guys, so that was the end of the FOSDEM presentation, and we hope to see you on the channel and using our stuff. Thanks for listening.